I'm very happy that we have a wonderful moderator. You should introduce yourself because you're not on the program.
I'm not sure if this works. Right. I'm not on the program. My name is Mike Butcher. I am the European editor of TechCrunch. We also run TechCrunch Europe, which is a network blog as part of the TechCrunch network. And I'm standing in for Robin Waters, who unfortunately couldn't be here because of a sporting injury.
So welcome.
Our pleasure.
Mike Butcher. Now you introduce your panelists because I think it's a very strong panel. All of you are successful entrepreneurs and you build companies in a very short time with a huge interest in consumers, very innovative, very entertaining, and we're really looking forward to this panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for making the graveyard slot of 9 a.m. after possibly the biggest party on the planet last night. But as I said before, my name is... you can come back. My name is Mike Butcher I'm the editor of TechCrunch Europe. And we're going to just make this a very sort of informal roundtable session. So if you have a question or a point that you'd like to make, then just please pipe up and we'll try and unpack some of the issues surrounding social games, which have become an incredible phenomenon over the last year, 18 months. I mean, really a very short amount of time. But we've expanded our panel a little bit because initially one of the gaping holes, I think, in this panel was casual games, because we have iPhone games represented, we have online games, Facebook kind of games, but we didn't have casual games. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let everybody introduce themselves. Really take as long as you want. We've got a long time for this panel, so just hang out, just talk away, and introduce yourselves. I'll shut you up if you get boring, and then we'll do some questions. There's a presentation as well from SGN from Sherman here, and then we'll just do a discussion. Okay. So starting right at the end there, we're going to have Kai from Game Duel. Okay. Now Kai, everybody from Kai back here, introduce yourselves. And then we'll start off. So Kai, go ahead and tell us about yourself and tell us about Game Duel.
Yeah, I'm Kai Bolik, the CEO of Game Duel. Game Duel is the largest European skill game site, casual game site, where people play casual games in tournaments against each other. We're doing this for about 3-4 years now. Has been quite successful, and casual games are games like pool, darts, solitaire, so really games for everyone, which means we have a very wide reach, which also makes us one of the major advertisements in traditional internet in Germany and France. We always have been among the top 10 over the last year. And what is interesting for us now is especially that also through social networks, the gaming space opens up. So for us, social networks are another platform which caters very well to this desire of people of competing against each other, because they can really see their social graph and can really see how they compete against their friends. And what we found out as well is that especially games, and especially casual games, which are very easy to learn, we say like 30 minutes to learn, a lifetime to master, they are really very widely culturally accepted, so you can play all over the world. And especially on Facebook now, people start playing those games that never before have even thought of playing this, just because seeing their friends are playing it. And the other interesting trend that we see is also now in the mobile space, where especially those short games are also easily played on the iPhone. And we are really interested in seeing how other mobile platforms will develop in the next months or years. Let's see.
Great. Thanks very much. So next, Christian, tell us about yourself and about Playfish.
Fantastic. I've actually got like 2 videos. Can I show them? Or
yeah, go ahead.
Fantastic. Yeah, so my name is Christian Segerström. I'm the chief executive and co-founder of Playfish. Actually, nowadays my title is actually vice president and general manager of Playfish at Electronic Arts, as of their acquisition of us 3 months ago. But, so I'm a games entrepreneur. I've been at the forefront of computer games really for the past 9 years. What makes me tick, what I'm passionate about is figuring out why people play and how we can get more people to play games. Because playing games is such a natural thing for people after all. And what's great about the computer games market, it's already bigger than music, it's already bigger than movies. As a market, it's about $40 or $50 billion, mainly off the back of, quite frankly, spotty teenagers playing games on their 42-inch plasma in the basement. So, you know, if that market is that big, then how big can games be? But so I spent 6 years building a mobile games company now called Glue Mobile, which we IPO'd in 2007. I then went on to found Playfish, and I wanted to talk about real quick what Playfish is all about and kind of why social games are such a phenomenon today. So our vision, I'll do this through 2 slides, or 3 slides and 2 videos. So our vision as a company is to change how the world plays games, away from games where you play because of that solitary journey of what's happening on the screen and you kind of imagining you versus the monsters, toward people playing together and people playing because it's fun to interact and engage with each other, with friends and family in particular. So what we try and do as a company is we try and bring games back to where they came from. In lots of ways, I think the recent period in computer games where it really was you versus the monsters will be seen as an anomaly in the history of computer games, or in the history of games, because games are inherently social. Whether you play football, whether you play board games, card games, or any kind of games between friends, it's inherently social. And I think that's where computer games are going again. The reason it can go there is because of social networks. Because before it was very difficult to connect with friends online. Now, through social networks like Facebook, it's actually incredibly easy. It's very straightforward to create games where the primary driver of that gameplay, or the game actually has access to your friends so that you can create primary drivers like competition, cooperation, expression, the things that you do in real life with your friends. So, and just to give 2 quick examples of this, if we can play the first video, please. This is a game called Restaurant City with 17 million players that effectively asks you the question, if you ran a restaurant, what would it be like? Who would work for you? Who would be the toilet cleaner? Who would be the cook? Who would be your servants? And what would your restaurant look like? So it's all about expression. This is about building your empire with your friends and expressing yourself.
Feel free to unpack this. Feel free to explain the video as it runs.
Sure. Yeah, so after you hire all your friends, you decorate your restaurant, you get to check out on the street what other restaurants other people have around you, ultimately trade ingredients with them and build the biggest restaurant empire you can. Again, cooperatively and competitively with your friends. So that's Restaurant City. It's a good example of a social game which is all about expression, showing who you are, who you would be. It's aspirational. You work with friends, you trade ingredients with them, and get rewards by acting cooperatively. The second video I'm going to show you is actually a game that didn't used to be possible ever. This is actually our biggest game today with 21 million monthly active players. It's called Pet Society. It's a game about friendship and love. That's the pure theme behind the game. So, Pet Society. It's all about you, your pet, in a virtual village with all your friends and their pets. You advance in the game by cooperatively taking care of each other's pets, and ultimately decorating your pet, decorating your house, showing who you would be in this world. And all kinds of social interaction with friends is ultimately what delivers your advancement in this game. This is a great example of a social game where which simply would not make sense on any other platform. 21 million monthly active players on this. So that's two quick examples of social games. So we've grown we're just over 2 years old as a company. We've grown to about 60 million monthly active players in about 2 years, mainly off the back of creating games for people to play together on social networks. And I think this is, as a games entrepreneur, this is by far the most exciting times in the computer games industry I've ever seen. It's exciting because, as Mike said, it's grown incredibly quickly. Just 9 months ago, the total sum of the top 10 games on Facebook was about 90 million monthly actives. The sum of the top 10 games now is over 250 million monthly actives in 9 months. That's phenomenal growth. But we're also, I think, in the middle of a very important inflection point in the mobile games industry. Sorry, in the social games industry, rather. I think like any new platform, new platforms start off with new IP being created and tons of new exciting things. I think what we're going to see in the next phase of growth of the platform is actually the influx of traditional IP. This happened on mobile, which was my previous area in my previous company, where games like Jammed at Bowling were the biggest games initially, and then it happened on the iPhone. Initially, you had iFart and you had Flight Control and these things. You now look at the top 10 sellers on the iPhone, and they're all big brands. So you have this happening. I think this is what's going to happen next on social networks, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity to further grow the market. So that was my 10 seconds.
Well done, Christian. And later on, I'll be asking you what on earth you saw in $400 million offer from Electronic Arts. Now, moving quickly to Chris Russo from Fantasy Sports Network. Is there a feedback noise going on? But anyway, I can hear something interesting in the background. And so let's go to you then, Chris. Now, tell us about Fantasy Sports and what you do quickly. Go ahead.
I'm Chris Russo, CEO of Fantasy Sports Ventures. We are a marketing and media company focused on fantasy games. As some of you may know, fantasy sports, particularly in the United States, has become a huge phenomenon. There are approximately 30 million people in the U.S. playing fantasy games, and that really understates, in some ways, the importance, because from a usage standpoint, these players are so engaged, so passionate, use so much content on the web, and essentially what fantasy sports allow fans to do is become a general manager, to select their own team of real-world players and then either win or lose based on how those players do on the field. And so what you have is a great competition where friends get together in groups of 12 in fantasy leagues and really compete against each other to see who's smarter, who's the better sports expert, and that generates a tremendous amount of usage and a tremendous amount of business opportunities. Now, our company specifically has aggregated about 500 niche fantasy sports sites. We reach ourselves more than 20 million unique users a month. The model is largely an advertising model, although there are subscription elements as well, and we're now moving into some pay products. And this business is showing no signs of slowing. It's growing at about 20 to 25% a year overall. And again, just is really about fan engagement, fans showing their smarts and their passion. And in my view, is really the original social network where you have 10 or 12 friends from school or from work getting together and competing really about their knowledge of professional sports. It's big in the United States, but it's also growing in the UK and other parts of the world.
Thank you very much, Chris. Next up, we have Nils Holger, who's from Big Point. Nils.
Good morning. Hello?
You're quite loud anyway.
I'm loud enough? Maybe like from yesterday, I'm still loud enough. Good morning. My name is Nils Henning. I'm from Big Point. And I'm in Big Point right now for 4.5 years. And I remember very well when I joined the company, I had the vision with the founder. We wanted to build up a company, and our target was to build up a company with 30 to 50 employees. And we thought, if we manage this, it's a good deal. Right now, we are close to 350 people based in Hamburg. And we sold a big part of the company to NBC Universal, and we have an office as well in New York, so everything turned to be different than we expected it. And I think one key reason is that I think about 4 or 5 years ago, nobody was really betting on games, and it wasn't such a hot topic, and nobody could really imagine what might be the impact of the gaming industry and how fast it might grow up. And when I think right now about Big Point, mainly I think we don't have such a big cannibalization with what we saw on Facebook games. We have more more typical games, I would say, for us, more the gameplay itself is in the focus, like, you know, from classical games, so not the typical social games. But what we have in common, we have also massively multiplayer online games, so a couple of thousand people are playing simultaneously at the same time against each other, and this is one of the key drivers of the games. Why we became so successful, how we were growing so fast, and we define it by a couple of reasons. One reason was a way to interact, to be social with each other, and to maybe play the console game at home on the HD TV, but when it's about playing with guilds, with clans, everything that you heard about games from World of Warcraft, people tend to play online games. Another big reason what we think about, we were integrating right now more than 1,000 different media partners. So all the games you find on MTV's Viacom, all over Europe and Latin America, soon in the US, on NBC, Universal, USA Networks, Sci-Fi, on internet portals like Yahoo and others like MySpace, special ones in countries like Terra, Telefonica, Orange in France. We are providing all of these portals with games, and they're monetizing quite well in the final end and promoting us. And therefore, we are quite happy that in the final end, we had a very nice Christmas present. It was the 24th of December. We were hitting 100 million registered users, and I think it's quite a good result because we had this growth within 3-4 years. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And if the sound guys could, we could hear an incredible sort of feedback noise going on, which it says, which anyway, we'll carry on. So last but not least, Sherman, do you want to tell us about yourself?
I'm Sherman Pishavar. I'm the founder and executive chairman of a company called SGN, Social Gaming Network. I'm going to show you a couple of videos. What we do is pretty much everything that Christian does with Playfish, but we do it all on connected devices. So we believe that the future of games is going to be mobile, social games on the go, and that you're going to have your iPhone, your Android phone, and fingers crossed for Wednesday's Apple announcement, your tablet, to be able to play incredible games. And part of that theory is to basically say, what if you could build games that are console quality and connected with players around the world, all in your pocket on your device? And that's exactly what we set out to do. I started the company in March of 2008, was able to get great investors like Greylock and Founders Fund, who are here today, to back us, and Jeff Bezos. And within that time, we're now 100 people with offices in Palo Alto, China, Romania, and Argentina. So without further ado, let me show you what our capabilities are on the iPhone, which surprises quite a lot of people. Should turn this up so it drowns out the beautiful noise. Yeah. Can we turn the sound on? So this is Skies of Glory. We just launched this on Christmas, and it's basically a flight simulator game that is doing quite well without a brand. Thank you, Christian. And it's selling. It's along with Fast, the other game since Christmas, we've done about $500,000 just in selling jets and bullets and fuel, etc. And this is all multiplayer. So when you look at the quality here, you're basically seeing a game that looks like it's on a console like an Xbox, but it's all on devices around the world. And Apple's announcement yesterday with their financial results was they sold 9 million iPhones in 90 days in their last quarter, and 21 million iPod touches. So these are all connected devices, and millions of people are playing these games. Right now, our games are in 1 in 3 iPhones around the world. So that's Skies of Glory. One of the key innovations with our engine is the ability to actually do multiplayer games over the 3G connection. I really didn't want the limitation of just being on Wi-Fi. So we basically cracked the code on how do we scale these types of intensive games with 3D, but over 3G. So I kind of call it 3D, 3G. So Fast has sold, I think we're about 2.5 million users now. We launched this in June, and it's doing very well. Now, we don't just do flight games. We also have pet games, and our biggest game by far is a game called iBowl, which is basically Janda bowling, except with one key differentiation, which is using the accelerometer to do Wii-style games. So you swing your iPhone like a bowling ball. And I was going to challenge you to a golf challenge if you'd like. So we have a game called SGN Golf, and you basically swing the iPhone in the air and see how far you can hit the golf ball. And I think we're going to do a quick challenge.
So now we're having a live demonstration of the iPhone with a social game called. Ladies and gentlemen, now.
Chris Russo should do that. You have managed NFL.com before?
Do we have can we get video on this or not, Sherman?
I'll show the game real quick, and then we'll try to beat each other.
Okay.
This is SGN Golf. I think everybody can zoom in.
Okay, Sherman, hold it real still because there's a camera on it. Yeah, there's a camera on it. Hold it very still.
So we're gonna start the game. We'll just do driving range for now. And again, this is like Wii, so we use the accelerometer when we play. And this was my first idea, and it exploded on the iPhone. So can everybody see this? No, thank you. All right. So the way it works, you set.
I get out of your way. Yeah, I think Nike is looking for a new testimonial, actually. So maybe. That's perfect. I can't do that better.
Actually, I do.
We get the idea.
But I think it's no. We move on.
Fantastic.
You owe me money.
Well done, man. Guys, that is an incredible thing because using a device like the iPhone with the accelerometer really does change the game. I mean, basically, it turns what was originally just a normal kind of a game into a Wii game, but then into a Wii social game. Again, it's astounding, really. I mean, it's incredible.
All around the world.
Yeah. So everybody grab mics and stuff. So because we're going to talk about this stuff. So, about a year ago, literally a year ago, 18 months ago, social games really exploded on the scene the last couple of years. Farmville was one of the early games, especially on Facebook. Now, quickly, basically, just anybody, let's talk about this. Games were originally quite social in a way, to an extent, online. What actually happened to make them as viral and as to explode in the way that they did over the last couple of years? Maybe Christian, do you want to answer that?
It's quite straightforward, actually. It's just a Facebook platform. I mean, Facebook have done an amazing job at, on the one hand, creating a fantastic user experience purely for sharing, sharing and connecting with friends. But in addition to that, when they launched their platform now 2 years ago, just over 2.5 years ago, they created this amazing experience where you could, as a developer, you could create games that plug into your social graph, your sets of, your relationships to your friends, but also, perhaps even more importantly, as a user of the Facebook platform, you suddenly had access to ways of interacting with your friends through games, which provided a user experience which was both intuitive, which allowed for you to discover games socially through what your friends are playing, and also, striking that balance between, on the one hand, enabling discovery, but not being so in your face that you get alienated from that platform. So I think, in one word, Facebook happened.
Okay, and go ahead.
I think another key driver that most of the content you can play just out of the browser. So in the past, you had quite big limitations. I mean, when you have a look at games 5-6 years ago in the browser, it looked like a static website. And if you have a look nowadays at new technologies like Unity, a game really looks like a console game, and you just run it out of the browser. So you have access from work, from university, wherever you are online, you can access the game.
And then, of course, broadband speeds as well. I think they are important other underlying drivers, but the real exposure.
And I think this is the fascinating issue about this market is that, in fact, I was talking about this last night with some of these guys, which is that, I mean, basically console games, you know, $60–70 billion market, but you have to buy a console, you have to put it in your room, you have to, you know, connect it to your TV or whatever it is. With a browser game, you know, maybe it costs anything from $250,000 to $1 million to produce a social game and then to get out there to potentially, you know, billions of people on the planet who have access to the internet. And that is a real incredible game changer. Christian, why on earth did you sell to EA for $400 million? I mean, what was all that about? I mean, no, but you actually famously stood up in front of venture capitalists and said, we want to kill EA, and then you sold out to them. Now, hold on a second, right? What exactly happened? You know, did you want to play a longer game, or what was the opportunity you saw?
Okay, so I mean, firstly, I actually, I don't believe I said I wanted to kill EA. I believe to say that companies like EA have to evolve with the industry.
You wanted to kill it.
I believe that was the exact quote. Firstly. And secondly, no, actually, I think there's a really important point.
Evolve as in you had the, I know because I have a friend in the audience when you said that, and you had a dinosaur on the slide when you said EA. Right?
And some mammals in front. Yeah, no, that's right. No, but I do think, look, I mean, computer games are in the middle of a tectonic plate shift from a physical product-driven industry to a digital service-driven industry. It's a fact of life. It's happening in other types of media, especially pronounced in computer games right now. That said, there is also, I mean, I've been in games for now 8 years, right? Been pushing the boundaries of where games are going. And I think one of the things that is evident in any new game platform, and this is true from the PlayStation 2 through to, initially mobile games like Java, based on Java and Brew technology, and now mobile games on the iPhone. When any new platform gets launched, you can create new IP. It's straightforward because there's not that much supply of product. Consumers look at the new thing, they get into the new, that platform and discover the new content. As any platform matures, look at the iPhone is such a fantastic example. When the iPhone came out, it's arguably one of the most democratic game platforms in the world. Very easy to publish on the iPhone, doesn't cost very much to create a game. The initial 6 months, you wouldn't see a single IP anywhere in the top 10 of that platform. Over time, you now look at the December sales of the iPhone, literally 9 out of the 10 titles in the top 10 top grossing titles were based on IP from outside the games industry.
So I want to bring Sherman in on
challenge him on that
but
point.
Here's the deal. 1 second, is that this is actually a very good point, but the thing is that the barriers to entry actually are being reduced now. They're going down because you have access to the iPhone. No. I mean... Okay, so let me wait 1 point, and then we'll go to Sherman. Go ahead.
Okay. So for us, what was exciting about working with EA is here's a publisher who has, in my view, the most credible digital gaming strategy out there. And in addition to being the leading publisher on the iPhone, they had 7 out of the top 11 grossing titles on the iPhone over the past in December. And we have the opportunity not only to continue to create own IP the way we have done in the past, but we're also able to leverage the broader IP of the publisher on the platform. Because I sincerely believe we will look at this platform in the next year, in the next 2 years, you will see the same thing happen as has happened on every other game platform. Right. IP will become important because ultimately consumers love IP.
So it's all
they
about
will
IP.
Choose IP, all other things equal. Quality has to be there, but they will choose IP.
Sherman.
I think the game changer is that the social networks and the social graph that we have with Facebook and the beginnings of it is beginning to happen on the iPhone changes the game in terms of what your fury is. So if you look at a number of things. One is if you look at any of the flight simulator games, all of the brands that are out there, all of the Ace Combat, everything, we've beaten every single one of them so far in all of the paid services. So all of the rankings, everything else. You look at Tapulous. It's beaten Guitar Hero and Rock Band, everything else, consistently. So, and if you look at Zynga's...
That's actually not true for December, by the way. if you look at the charts. No,
I
it's-
know the
if you look at
numbers.
the gross.
Tapulous beat Guitar Hero in terms of
grossing in revenue in
total,
December.
They
Have you
added
looked at it?
5 million users. This is like Crossfire now. We're very good friends.
No,
so
it's good. No,
uh,
it's good. No, look, I mean, I just
but-
wish we had a slide of looking at the top 10 grossing titles because he's there, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so basically, I'm talking about Tapulous added 5 million unique users. Also, we added 2 million users on FAST. So I think there's a middle ground in what we're talking about. So if you look at Zynga's games without any IP, they've out executed everyone. And EA, with all of the brands that they had before they acquired you, weren't able to at all compete on social networks. So I just don't buy that IP is the key differentiator in the future.
It's not to take anything away from IP. I mean, Farmville, fantastic success, will not go away anytime soon, right? All I'm saying is that as a platform matures, the reason you're able to create IP early on in a platform is because it's new for everybody. It's a small, agile company, so you need to learn the platform and learn what consumers like that are successful. Over time, all else equal, quality has to be there, and that adaptability to the platform has to be there. But if you have two games next to each other, out of which one is a familiar IP that you know and trust, and the other game is not, typically consumers tend to go for the IP. And I've seen this for 8 years.
I've got some issues with this subject, so but can I just make a quick point?
Sorry.
But go
Yeah,
for
maybe just to add one idea to that. I fully agree that the platforms mature. So actually what we will see is over the coming months that Facebook becomes much more like the general internet. But also in the general internet you have games that are not driven by big IP that develop. So I think it still counts that you have high quality. And of course, in a way, I would say still, even after the changes, Facebook, if they don't change too much, will still have the social graph, which again, takes part of that what a brand usually does. A brand usually gives a verification, yes, this is the right game to buy, and if you have your friends telling that, that's a very strong argument. So I would say yes, but also yes.
I just want to, we're going to throw to questions fairly shortly because in order to make sure that we have time for you guys to have a say. But I want to bring up the subject of the scams. So OfferPal and now the problem with the scams in social game was that some social games, and we did a lot of this stuff on TechCrunch, which is about how players who accepted offers for in-game currency in exchange for special offers, which were actually lead generation scams. I mean, 10,000 coins that never actually play out. Now, I want to ask you guys: although there's this enormous explosion in social games right now, are users going to get tired of the fact that they're actually going to, a lot of them they're kind of being scammed to an extent, or is the industry, this bizarre small industry, but it's very, very early, going to kind of being able to regulate itself somehow? I mean, Nils, what do you think? What do you think?
First of all, in our games, we saw more the all payment methods for actions. It was more something growing out of Facebook. So it's not really typical in the classical online gaming industry. It's coming more and more. We know that the big players in the market, like Playfish, Zynga, and they started with companies. We know the companies. We know Super Rewards, OfferPal. And we have a look at them. Of course, it makes sense for us for a certain point to integrate these offers, but we see more value in if you want to target a younger audience and you want to give them some surveys to fill out some questions. But what we saw in the offers quite often, that they repeat. And I mean, a user cannot subscribe 5 times for Blockbuster Video or other things. So we were more going in the past the way of classical monetization. If someone wants to spend money, he either uses an SMS, PayPal, or whatever, and spends money inside of the game. But I wanted to drop one last point, very short. Yeah. I think before, what we didn't really point out, and this is all of us, like we are sitting here, we are all from the digital space. And if we have a look at the gaming space itself, also Electronic Arts, Activision, many other players, they're billion-dollar companies, and they didn't manage it to build up a digital distribution in a proper way within a couple of years. And what you see in the gaming space from all of us is kind of similar what we saw before in the music industry and other industries, that the big players were really doing hard in moving digital. And this is quite surprising, and this speeds up our business extremely.
Absolutely. Now, everyone, if you have a question, put your hand up so I know where you are in the audience. We've got 1, 2... Anyone else who's got questions? But could you line up against the mic so that we can hear you? And I just want to go to Chris lastly before we do Q&A, which is fantasy games. You don't have these problems? You don't have the scam problems because it's a whole regulated network, or what?
I think what's happened in fantasy games is that about 10 years ago, there was a lot of focus on subscription games and pay games. That evolved into a primarily ad model. So really the issue became, are consumers getting annoyed because there are too many ads, too many offers that are being thrown through these games? Wow. I think what's happened in the last year or so is everybody is now seeing the success in social games and saying, how do we become a part of that, either through subscriptions or paying to play games? And then you get into all these issues about if you pay to play a game and then there are cash prizes, how do you do that in the way that you stay within the laws with respect to gambling and other regulations? So that is the sort of the next frontier in a way in fantasy sports, is to explore those pay models, which have now proved to be very successful in some of these other sports.
Right, okay, everybody, get up there and get on the mic and let's hear some questions and we'll try and rattle through these, workshop these questions. Go for it.
Good morning.
Can you say who you are and where you're from?
Absolutely. My name is Philip Peitsch from Axel Springer. Gentlemen, social gaming has been skyrocketing, but where do you see it going? I mean, if I look at the top games on Facebook, most of them are very similar topics, aquarium, farms, restaurants, sort of. Is that going to continue for the next years? Do we see different kinds of games coming? Do we see the business models changing because Facebook may be taking a chunk of the pie? Where do you see it going?
So
will Facebook take a chunk?
So let me take at least our view on that is, one, it's incredibly early. Like no game platform has ever grown this quickly. So I think a lot of what you're seeing right now is just a reflection of how early the marketplace is. And I think, by the way, this is the same thing with some of the somewhat unscrupulous monetization mechanics that we've seen in the past. We've always, for one, we've always focused on the player experience and creating the best possible experience, including how you pay for something. So we haven't actually participated in that pretty much at all. But so I think maybe 3 things are going to happen. I think we'll see 3 things happening. One is that we're going to see game quality and the sophistication of design to continue. I think we're going to see that continue. I think we're going to see new types of gameplay. We're not going to see, like if you think of the farming game category on Facebook right now, it's 30 or 40% of the monthly active users. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case in that distant future, to put it that way. I think it's a transitory phase of the industry. I think so you will see the game categories and the kind of games we make mature. The second thing I think you will see is that you will see traditional both game and media IP make a big inroads in the industry, purely because it will allow us to reach more consumers. It will allow us to leverage some of the marketing and brand awareness and those brand universes outside of or inside the social gaming environment, which I think is going to be powerful. And the third thing I think you're going to see is that the social gaming is going to go increasingly multi-platform. I think you're going to see, like what Shervin was talking about, increasing these devices are internet access devices. And whether you think of it in the living room, or in your pocket, wherever, they're internet access devices. And these games are very thin in how they're client interaction. So they are possible to create on those kind of platforms. So I think to put those 3 things together, the companies that I think you will see will be successful in the environment will be the companies that can continue to create great games and innovate in gaming, create great consumer experiences. That's the most important thing by far. But also the companies that have access to IP, and also the companies who have access to execute, or who are able to execute multi-platform. And in lots of ways, I think we've seen this super rapid growth, but I do also believe there's an era of consolidation coming up in the industry where you're going to see some companies making it, other companies not.
Let's line up our next question, but Sherman, do you want to speak to that? Because you're famously platform-oriented.
Absolutely. I think the bridge between the platforms is the most exciting area, because if you look at the growth rates of the iPhone and Android and hopefully tablet, they're actually looking like they're going to be Facebook-like numbers, but these are actual devices that's bringing connectivity and everything else. So I agree with what Christian's saying in terms of the evolution of the 3 points. I just think that the core engagement mechanism between users and the devices is going to shift in terms of time spent. So rather than being on a PC and a laptop and playing the games, you're going to be on these types of devices and spending the money through it. The other big change, which just happened in October, which I think also will change the equation on mobile, on the iPhone, is free-to-play. We weren't able to do free-to-play games until October of 2009, so that was just a quick change. And most of the games are going to shift away from these premium games that are at the top grossing games today, and that's mostly because of programming, that they're getting placement by Apple. And what's going to happen is when you have free games of that quality, it's going to shift everyone in the same way that Facebook did to free-to-play experiences where you microtransact.
Okay, so question?
Yeah, I mean, my question is...
Can you say who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, sorry, I'm Alexis Bond from eRepublic. We're a massive social strategy games publisher. My question is a bit wide. In terms of Facebook, if you look at Facebook, one interesting thing is a lot of the games that you now see on Facebook actually aren't that social at all in terms of an experience. They're very sort of solitary experiences. And it sounds like Facebook is more like a distribution, viral kind of element and a social plugin. So my question was, what's your opinion about that? And it does feel that actually a lot of games outside of Facebook have better social features than some of the games that are on Facebook. So how do you see that? And my second question goes back to the IP and the big players kind of thing. Aren't you concerned there might be a flame out? I mean, the companies like Zynga and even yourself, Playfish and all that, I mean, when you have 60, 70 million people playing your games, how do you give them proper customer service? How do you really do it okay?
Yeah, thank you. So social games, a lot of social games actually aren't social. They're actually viral, but they're not internally social. And secondly, you know, what's the flame out on the IP? I mean, anybody want to take that quickly?
Yeah. I mean, for us, we have a tournament platform where people play against each other, which is inherently a social experience. And I think even though many of the Facebook games, our games, for instance, we moved in December 2009 on Facebook, and it had been among the top 5 fastest growing apps, called Bubble Pop, very short game, not really social in the interaction itself, but still when you play it against your friends, it's lifted up into a totally new experience, which is social. And I think that is what Facebook actually adds, that it makes even simple games
just
social.
As a quick stat, our biggest game, Pet Society, has been installed by 50 million people over the past 18 months. It's 18 months old. But out of those, 21 million played in the last 30 days. So 40% of everyone who's ever touched that game, including people on this panel and journalists and whatnot, actually played in the past 30 days. So there is a fundamental engagement driver in social gameplay, because when you play with friends, you're more likely to play. It's true, there's also virality features on the platform which allow you to design games in such a way that they spread. But if they just spread and nobody re-engages with their friends, then they flame out. I think that's right.
Exactly. I'm not sure how much more time we've got. We're going to be wrapping up shortly, but I'm going to give the panel very, very short point that you can give. I can give, sort of 30 seconds what you want to say about this subject, and starting with you, Kai, very briefly. Do you want to go? I mean, casual games. You think you're going to take over the world with social casual games?
You mean the next steps?
Yeah.
No, I think casual games are definitely one of the broadest games ranges because they're very easy approachable. And so it is definitely one of the major growth areas also in the social game space and also in the cross-platform game space. So we are very bullish on the next years to come.
Christian, what's the next step, apart from earning out your sale to EA?
Thank you. No, so the computer games industry is irrevocably changing from being physical products to being digital services. What's today called social games is very much at the bleeding edge of that transformation. It's games as a service, games paid for by microtransactions, games on lots of devices in a browser. I think what you'll see is that evolution continuing to be very rapid, but also maturing. You'll see consolidation in the industry. You're going to see brands coming into the industry in a big way. And you're going to see a continued pretty rapid growth. And hopefully, that by expanding the base of game players around the world, it will also lift up the entire industry across all platforms. So we are very bullish about both the future of what today is called social games, but perhaps that's just the tip of the iceberg of a much broader, bigger evolution in the computer games industry over the next 3 to 5 years. And it's going to be the most exciting space in media over the next 5 years to come.
Chris.
Yeah, you know, fantasy games have been around for a lot longer than some of the products that the folks up here are talking about, but there really is a transformation and evolution going on in fantasy sports, in part driven by what's happening on Facebook and the social networks. And what you see, particularly on Facebook, is an explosion in fans playing fantasy sports and fantasy games on Facebook, but it tends to be a more casual experience than the fans playing fantasy sports on an ESPN or a traditional sports site. What's great about this new medium is that we're now introducing more and more fans to fantasy sports through the social platforms, getting them more engaged, and also helping drive businesses like ours, which really rely on that passion and that engagement.
Right. Nils.
So first of all, I also believe that the gaming space is one of the most interesting spaces. Talking about BigPoint, I totally agree. We are also working right now on IP with big Hollywood studios. We believe that the movie industry, the gaming industry, they will collaborate more and more together, creating products together. One final thing that's very important, and including myself, I love Facebook, but internet is not yet Facebook. If you think about yourself, I'm sure that you don't spend 90% of your time online just on Facebook. And what we did, and I think this is something that also matters, it's the whole internet, it's the whole digital distribution. Facebook is an unbelievable great driver for it, but there are many, many other ways to build up companies.
Thank you. And lastly, Sherman, just tell us what you think is going to happen over the next couple of years. And also, can you break any news about the tablet? Because you must have such an inside track on that, right? So go for it.
I have one right in my coat.
Oh, really?
Basically, I mean, when I look out into the arc of the next 3 to 5 years, I think in the same way that the iPhone has changed a lot of user behaviors who've interacted with it and expectations around what you get from a mobile phone, I think things like the tablet and the iPhone are training people to basically compute on the go. So, and I think, you know, what that means is apps on the go and social games on the go are going to dominate the way we actually interact with games and entertainment and information. And so we're big believers in mobility. And that does shift everything, because if you think about it, if you know, in 5 years from now, we're going to look at our laptops and our PCs and our computers as the rotary phones of our age. We're never going to interact with them in the same way in 5 years. And that's a huge shift. And with that, as Christian has talked about it brings a lot of changes in companies like EA and other companies that create these types of games and forms of entertainment. And that's why we're making such a big bet on social games on the go. We think that shift is going to happen. There is going to be consolidation. There's going to be a lot of investment in building the next big brands and the next IPs that we'll be looking back on, I think, 5 years from now and say, wow, you know, it was a prescient discussion we had here in Munich today.
Absolutely, yeah. And finally, from me, I'd just like to say that social games really are quite an incredible phenomenon. And I think one thing that we actually didn't touch on, I'd really would have liked to expand it if we had more time, and how media companies are going to engage with a lot of these startups. Just one small point from me at TechCrunch Europe is that we cover specifically European companies in the startup and entrepreneurial space. And also I'm working on a new project called Tech Hub, or Tech Hub on Twitter, or techhub.com, to put in place a real-world space for entrepreneurs like this to network and to meet investors and developers and make Europe cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap up the panel. Thank you very much to a panel. Thank you for you turning up at the graveyard slot after the big party. Thank you very much. Thank you to DLD, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.